We are excited to host tonight's presenter, Andrew Garn, who is a native New Yorker, photographer, and author who grew up surrounded by pigeons. Andrew has been photographing, rehabilitating, and observing Columba livia, I think it's livia, for many years. Since 2008, when he exhibited photographs, video installations, and sculptures of pigeons at A.M. Richard Fine Art in Brooklyn, New York. He has continued to photograph them, documenting the entire spectrum of development, including full-grown pigeons, newborns, babies, and squeakers. He has grown to love these birds. Mr. Garn is a notable fine art and editorial photographer whose work has been widely exhibited and appeared in the pages of numerous magazines, including the New York Times Magazine, Fortune, Forbes, Interview, Vogue, Vibe, Time, Newsweek, Der Spiegel, French Photo, Elle Décor, and New York and Bloomberg Media, just to name some. He is also the recipient of grants from the New York State Council on the Arts, the Graham Foundation, the National Endowment for the Arts, and the J.M. Kaplan Fund, among others. Andrew's books include Exit to Tomorrow, The History of the Future, Subway Style, Architecture and Design of the New York City Subway, winner of the New York Society Book Award, the Houseboat Book, Bethlehem Steel, and the New York Pigeon, Behind the Feathers, which tonight's presentation is based upon. In the introduction to his book, The New York Pigeon, Mr. Garn writes that it is hard to imagine New York City without pigeons, as it is to think of the Everglades without alligators or Antarctica without penguins. Pigeons are our nature, he says. So, here to take us on a lively visual walk through the wonderful world of the rock dove, Columba livia, and Andrew, you'll correct me if I've been pronouncing that incorrectly, is Andrew Garn, who will reveal the unexpected beauty of the omnipresent pigeon with his presentation, Love Them or Love Them, a brief history of the ubiquitous rock dove. Andrew, welcome. You can share your screen and begin when you are ready.
Okie dokie. Can everyone see me and hear me and all that? Not yet. That's my nice screen. Okay. Let me make sure I can get up the slideshow. Thanks for coming tonight. And my first question, okay, wait. Do we see the, oh, here we go. Okay. There's always something. Okay. So, thank you for coming. And let me ask the audience, who has ever seen an actual rock dove, Columba livia pigeon? Is anybody there? Because I know you all live in Florida by the Everglades. Maybe you haven't seen a pigeon.
You can react, by the way, by using the reaction button at the bottom. Great. Wendy has, Kevin Baker.
Okay, that's good. That's sort of a jokey question. And I just wanted to show off some of the merchandise that we'll be selling in the virtual gift shop. This is a medallion of a pigeon with an emerald, an actual emerald eye. And this will be available in the gift shop at the end of the lecture. So thank you for coming. And there's a lot to cover. And it's interesting because I have been focused on pigeons for about 18 years. And I just learned something kind of phenomenal today, but we'll get to that. I actually did have a chance to add it to the lecture. So I actually started photographing pigeons in earnest. I grew up in Manhattan. There was pigeons all around, of course, but I never really noticed them or cared that much, to tell you the truth. I didn't know anything about nature. It took me to my later years to realize that trees bloomed in the spring and all sorts of things that you miss growing up in Manhattan, where there's not too much nature. And also the parks when I was growing up were totally unmanicured. There were no flowers. There was nothing. And I used to actually take plants home from my local park, which was Carl Schurz Park, little saplings or little weeds, and try to grow them in my bedroom. And at one point I had about 25 ugly little weeds growing in my bedroom. For some reason, I needed nature, but I didn't know it at the time. But there wasn't a single tulip or rose to be seen in any park. I mean, basically going to the park, all you cared about was not getting your bicycle stolen. And we're talking about the 70s. So I never really noticed pigeons. Okay, so this book, so I was in Central Park talking about pigeons around, 18 years ago, photographs. And I was birding with sort of a group of people I didn't really know, but they were very sophisticated birders. I was judging this by the brand of their binoculars. They had a lot of Swarovskis and Zeiss and Leicas and things like that. And they were sort of obsessing over little warblers that you could barely see. And, you know, I love warblers, don't get me wrong. And suddenly, like a gift from the heavens, 2 pigeons landed in our little group. And they were particularly beautiful pigeons. They were sort of iridescent red, brown. And I pointed them out to the people who were birding. I said, look at those. They're amazing. And they just all turned their noses up and sort of just poo-poo them. And something went off in my head. I was like, how could you dismiss their birds just like warblers? And I just thought, how could anybody dismiss such a beautiful creature? So I set about, it was my goal to photograph pigeons in sort of a new way that would open people's eyes. And since I did the book, I meet lots of people who are strangers to me, and they tell me, you know, I hated pigeons, and I saw your book, and I actually saw the light. So that makes me very, very happy. So the first question that we'll address tonight, what is a pigeon exactly? As I mentioned, pigeons are doves. They're definitely doves. And they were the doves that were on Noah's ship that he released to go and find land. And they came back with a branch, and he knew that he was near land. Those were rock doves, which are pigeons. Okay. So pigeons can be beautiful. Pigeons are pugnacious. They have to be if they live in cities, as they do, and they live in cities in all the continents except for Antarctica. I've seen pigeons in my travels in Siberia, living in some of the coldest cities where it's like 50 below zero. But pigeons are very smart, and as long as somebody's feeding them, they will find the warmest place possible. And in a city like Yekaterinburg, which is in Siberia, where it gets to be 60 below zero, they find heating vents from buildings, and they will spend the winter there, and they will survive the winters. Pigeons are fluffy. Is my little navigation bar in the shot, or are you seeing my screen, just my screen?
We're seeing your navigation bar as well.
Okay, let me just get rid of that. Hold on. Oops, sorry. I don't know why that is. I'm not sure how to get rid of that, to tell you the truth. Are you seeing the little, let's see. Don't know how to get rid of that.
I'm not seeing your computer navigation bar. I'm just seeing the pointer. That's all.
Oh, okay. I thought you were
I'm
seeing
sorry.
the whole.
I'm
Oh,
sorry.
okay. I see.
I'm
Okay.
sorry, Andrew.
No,
My
okay.
mistake.
No problem. Okay, here we go again. Okay, let me just go back. Sorry about that. Okay, so pigeons are fluffy. Pigeons are lovers, of course. They are the symbol of peace. And just like anyone else, they enjoy getting a Valentine's chocolate box when they can, and they will eat it when they can. And you see here in this picture, the pigeons appear to be kissing. And in fact, they are sort of kissing, but it's sort of a demonstration of that the male pigeon, which is on the right, can provide for the female. And both male and female pigeons produce crop milk. Many birds do. Hawks produce crop milk, and it's a sort of cheesy, high protein substance that they make in their crop, which is in their throat. It's a different organ that we do not have, and they will feed each other the crop milk. So here the male is showing that it is a good provider, and therefore will make a good mate and a good parent. Pigeons can be googly-eyed. And this is sort of a famous pigeon. This belongs to the head rehabber, I'm sorry to say, this is Fido, and he belonged to Eugene and Cody, who is his wife, and they found this pigeon wandering under the L train in Queens, and it just seemed to bond with humans. It didn't really want to live with other pigeons, so they kind of took it in. They tried to release it, and it just wanted to live with them, and now they have about 35 pigeons. And Fido is the name of the pigeon. He lived to 12. Unfortunately, he died, but he did come to the book party last July, and he was the hit. Everybody just loved to meet him. I think seeing, doing a book on pigeons is one thing, but seeing a live pigeon in an indoor setting just sets people off. They just go into a frenzy. Pigeons can be speckly. Pigeons are debonair. Pigeon eyes can be white, red, orange, brown, or even lavender. Now, no other bird has this kind of diversity. Why? Why do they have this kind of diversity? Well, pigeons are sort of like, you can compare them to dogs. They've been tinkered with by humans over the years. So you have feral pigeons, which come from places like India and Egypt and the Mediterranean. They're high up in cliffs, as we talked about, limestone cliffs usually, and they all kind of look the same. They're called blue bars, and they have 2 stripes on their wings. Now, when man got involved and started bringing pigeons in for breeding purposes, for instance, Darwin was a big pigeon breeder because it helped him research on the origin of the species, because you could do 7 generations of pigeons in the course of a year because they reproduce so quickly and so many times. They're one of the few birds that will have more than 1 or 2 broods a year. They have basically evolved to have 7 broods a year. So that's why you'll see pigeons, doing the little love dance in the middle of January. As long as there's food around, they want to mate and make babies. Not many other birds do that. I think like robins might have 2 broods if food is plentiful. Maybe, hawks, ospreys, they may also have 2 broods, but it depends on the abundance of food. So here we see 88 different pigeon eyes, and you can see how the variety is just incredible. You have white eyes, you have black eyes, brown eyes, lavender eyes, orange eyes. I mean, they're just incredible. Well, okay. Pigeons also like to dress as penguins. Pigeons are vegetarian seed eaters who shouldn't eat bread or hot dogs, although they are adaptable and they will eat just about anything. I have seen pigeons eating chicken wings, which is sort of ironic. I've seen them eating raw hamburger meat, and they will survive, but ideally they should eat seeds, corn, peas, nuts, things like that, and break up the nuts. I actually saw there's a flock of pigeons that live near the Port Authority. And if you don't know the Port Authority, it's kind of a seedy place on 42nd Street where buses come and go. It's kind of gross. And a bunch of pigeons managed to live there. And they're kind of the sickliest looking pigeons I've ever seen. They're kind of greasy. They're very, very sad. And I wondered about that. And as I was there, I saw somebody come by and throw a box of donuts at them. And they weren't even like nice donuts. They were disgusting donuts, like purple donuts, fluorescent green donuts. And they ate it. Of course they did, because they're pigeons. And that's why they looked all greasy, because, you are what you eat. Pigeons, also known as doves, are the symbol of peace. Pigeons are very resourceful, as you can see. So this is the BQE, which is the Brooklyn Queens Expressway that is in Queens, and it's filled with traffic all day long. And underneath, pigeons live on the girders in spite of the fact that pigeon spikes were installed there. They somehow managed to get a bottle and raise them above the spike so they could live very comfortably there. Now, I ask you if you could find any other bird that could be that resourceful. Pigeons are also delicious. And here we see, this is St. George's Church, which is near where I live. And this is the clock, and you see a hawk at the bottom looking up at the pigeons. And the pigeons seem sort of nonchalant. They're not really worried about the hawk, because they know a hawk cannot really get them from a close distance. A hawk really has to get a pigeon in midair while they're soaring, and they can pick one off. But when they're standing like this, there's no way they're in any sort of danger. So the hawk is going to be out of luck. So, sometimes I have to admit, I get tired of pigeons, so I try to get away from them once in a while. And they know where to find me. So this is Brighton Beach, and suddenly, I'm enjoying the sea air and the sand and the surf, and suddenly a pigeon comes out of nowhere. Young and old, everyone loves pigeons, as you can see. This gentleman, the girl on the left is in Dom Square, which is in Amsterdam, actually. And her father brought her there and sat her down in the midst of all these pigeons. And she was just delighted. I mean, she was screaming for joy. And the gentleman on the right comes to my local park frequently, and he just feels more comfortable feeding pigeons without his shirt. I can't explain it. Now, pigeons also enjoy playing hide and seek. I did a series of photographs in a studio showing the flight of pigeons and the maneuvers of their wings. And it is really spectacular. You'll see in the book, there's a whole section of pigeons flying. And why are they such good flyers? Well, we'll get to that a little later. Pigeons are socially progressive because both males and females share their parenting duties. So, and if a pigeon is orphaned, let's say, another set of pigeons will take over the parenting duties. So they're very socially connected. And pigeon flocks will stay together for years. And it's rare that a pigeon joins another flock. Pigeons are, this is a whole section of pigeons in the city. So you can see they really are in the city. That's the Williamsburg Bridge. The pigeon on the left is what I would call an aspirational pigeon. It's trying to hang out with an eagle. It doesn't understand that the eagle is a sculpture, but hoping that some of its size and will wear off on it. Now, like most New Yorkers, pigeons can live in very, very small spaces. Pigeons also admire art. This is the show that I did on pigeons with, this is the very beginning. So this was, I did photographs, videos, sculptures, and I also I raised 2 pigeons to have babies because the idea was that pigeons were being wiped out as the passenger pigeon. As incredible as it seems, there were so many passenger pigeons, and I think it was mentioned earlier on that 40% of the birds in the United States were passenger pigeons, and the last one died in 1913 because there were so many of them. They would blacken the sky for hours. The flocks would be in the millions of birds, and somehow they went extinct. So my show was premised on the possibility that rock doves, pigeons, Columba livia, would also go extinct. So I had a special pigeon repopulation room where I had 2 sets of pigeons, hoping that they would reproduce. And they did, of course, and I got to photograph the results. Pigeons appreciate architecture, and New York is a great place for that. Here's the New York Public Library on the left, and on the right is St. Patrick's and Rockefeller Center. Pigeons can also look like your grandmother. That's the spinning image of my grandmother. Pigeons, contrary to popular belief, are very clean and they love to bathe, in fact. And here are the 4 states of fluff. These are pigeons that are bathing on a very warm summer day, and they're moving their feathers around to get as much liquid, kill the mites and stay fresh. They like that feeling. Now, this is a really curious thing. In the wintertime, what do pigeons do when water is frozen? Well, they use snowflakes to clean their feathers. So they will lift up their wings and the snowflakes will land and they will melt on their feathers and it will act as a cleaning agent. I think it's 82 pigeons on the Washington Square Arch. I happened to walk through there one day, and this is a photograph with my iPhone, and it's just okay. So pigeons, I think, and you may too, think they may be our most important bird. Pigeons are on stamps. I don't think anyone in the audience is, and if you are, raise your hand. Pigeons have been used in religious sacrifices for thousands of years. I think in Assyria, they used 100,000 pigeons in sacrifices to kings when kings would die. Of course, pigeons have been messengers since the time of Genghis Khan, and Genghis Khan controlled more area on the earth than any human in history. I believe that he controlled from the Pacific Ocean all the way to Eastern Europe, and he used pigeons as his sort of post office, and this is in the 1200s. Of course, pigeons are delicious, and pigeons are decorated war heroes. Who here has heard of Cher Ami? Okay, and this is something, as I mentioned, I learned this something new today about pigeons. It's very exciting. So the designer and sculptor of the Statue of Liberty, Frederic Auguste Bartoli, made a monument of the aeronautiques, and it's a sculpture of a balloon, hot air balloon surrounded by pigeons. And you can see the pigeons here. And this is a model of it, which still exists in the Bartoli Museum, which is in, it's in Eastern France, actually. And a friend of mine just happened to be there and sent me this picture today. So during the Prussian War, the French-Prussian War, Paris was in siege and people were starving to death. They were basically eating rats. And so to get messages out to the army outside of Paris, they used hot air balloons to get out of the city carrying pigeons. And once the hot air balloons landed about 100 miles away, they would put messages on the pigeons, and the pigeons would fly home about 100 miles back to Paris, and that's how they were able to win the war. And Bartoli made this sculpture, and unfortunately it was melted down when the Nazis invaded Paris again in World War II. But it is a beautiful sculpture. Now, pigeons were once America's #1 bird to eat. For about 100 years ago, in fact, before they started messing with genetics of chickens and made their breast meat and all that, pigeons were the #1 fowl, I guess poultry that Americans ate. And there was pigeon farms all over the country, especially in California. And the idea with pigeons, they were free ranging. They would fly out during the day and feed themselves many times in fields. So they would find seeds and they would come back at night into their lofts. And the babies, which is what is usually eaten, they're called the squabs because they don't develop thick muscles. They are much more tender and more delicious. Those are the ones that are eaten, and they were taken from the lofts and sent all around the country. So people ate millions of pigeons every year. And the pigeon-human connection is over 5,000 years old. On the left, we see a Roman pigeon mosaic when there was giant pigeons back in the 1st century BC. They used to pull gladiators. It was amazing. Then pigeons got smaller. Here's a dovecote on the right in Petra, circa 5th century BC, and you can see the very much like today's dovecotes, that you might see in a rooftop in Brooklyn, these little cubicles for pigeons. So the architecture for dovecotes has not really changed. Pigeons are extremely smart. They can identify human faces and all 26 letters of the alphabet. And of course, B.F. Skinner, the Harvard scientist, he used pigeons to guide missiles using behavioral positive reinforcement. And he actually took his invention to the US Navy, and this is pre-computer, and the pigeons could in fact guide missiles just by giving a treat. And the US Navy was interested to a point where they kind of thought, well, we can't really use pigeons, unfortunately. And you see some of his assistants on the lower left putting the pigeons in little flight suits. He also taught them to play competitive games like ping pong. So the pigeons would try to pass the ball past the other pigeon, and if it went in, they would get a treat that came out of a little drawer in front of them. And the thing with pigeons is you could feed them and they will work tirelessly for 16 hours, basically, if they just get a treat. Pigeons are one of only 10 animals that can recognize themselves in a mirror. In fact, cats and dogs do not. So it's humans, bonobos, chimpanzees, gorillas, whales, dolphins, and pigeons. And not only can this is not that they just notice things in the mirror, because who hasn't seen a cat be afraid of a mirror, of its reflection in a mirror, but it doesn't realize that it's itself, where an animal has to have a mark on itself and know that that mark is on itself in order to have self-recognition. Pigeons can do that. Pigeons can actually tell the difference between Impressionist and Cubist paintings. They have successfully learned the difference between Monet and Picasso paintings, Cubism and Impressionism. And they've also been trained to distinguish healthy and cancerous tissue in X-rays with the same rate, the same success rate, which is 86%, as trained radiologists. So, pigeons are very graceful in flight. Why are pigeons such good flyers? Sorry. Okay, so a pigeon itself is just this incredibly efficient 13-ounce approximately flying machine. One pigeon is 13 ounces. It's about half in feather weight, and half of it is skin and bones, basically. So each pigeon has approximately 1,500 feathers, which is about average for a bird. I think the bird with the most feathers is a tundra swan, which has 100,000 feathers. And why do they have so many feathers? Well, obviously to keep them warm. Each feather on a pigeon of 1,500 feathers is different. There's certain ones are for flight, certain ones are for navigating, and others are for insulation against heat and cold. Now, this is showing you a pigeon body, which is the skin and the organs and the bone, and that roughly weighs 6.5 ounces also. This is an adolescent pigeon. It is at that very awkward stage where it's not quite a baby, a cute little baby. It's sort of more like a dinosaur. You can see it still has its downy feathers on its head, which are from the egg, actually. And here it's getting its mature feathers, which come in as quills, basically, and then they unravel, they unfurl and become feathers. It's not them, and you see how large the actual foot is, about the size of a adult pigeon. So it's a little gangly. That would be a word I would use, gangly. But a mother still loves it. This is an X-ray of a pigeon skeleton, and this particular pigeon is from the Wild Bird Fund, which is New York's only rehab facility. And they've taken last year they took in 13,000 birds, and about half of them are pigeons. They've taken all the songbirds that get injured, the hawks, the owls, everything. But half of the patients are pigeons. And this is a pigeon that has a fracture of its radius bone, and you can see it right there. And it's pretty easily fixed. They make a little cast out of some cardboard and some tape, and about 2 weeks later it's healed. Now, and as many birds, many pigeon bones are hollow. They're hollow for many reasons, because to save weight, and also they're to have air sacs in between. And air sacs work in concert with the lungs. Okay, so this is showing sort of an exploded view. This is an old German, rendering of a pigeon that's sort of cut open. You can see the crop, as we mentioned earlier. That's the place where they make the high protein, cheesy substance to feed their babies. And then here are the air sacs, which are in between the esophagus, the trachea, and around the lungs. I think there are 11 air sacs, and the air sacs work in concert with the lungs to provide oxygen. And the thing with air sacs is they can provide direct to the muscles. So that's why pigeons are such great flyers, and they can fly hundreds of miles nonstop without stopping for water or air. Water or food. Okay, this is another view, and here you can see in the schematic, the purple is that's the trachea, and then the other purple are the lungs. Okay, that's the left lung, right lung, and here there's the overlay of blue is the air sacs. And they also have air sacs in their wings, in between the bones of their wings. Now, another reason why pigeons are such good flyers is they have a huge breast muscle. It's 1/3 of their mass, and that's what controls their wings. And that's also why squabs are so tasty, because they have this large breast muscle, and before they fly, it's much more tender and delicious. So a pigeon that is running around on the streets and flying around won't be that delicious. Pigeons can fly up to 500 miles nonstop. And they have extraordinary navigational abilities. So this is a CT scan of a pigeon head, and you can see all the arteries and nerve endings, and they're very complex creatures. So there are many, many studies on pigeon navigation, and I think there are more scientific studies on pigeons than I think all birds put together, because pigeons make good test subjects. They are patient, and they're also used to being around humans, because they've been around humans their whole lives, basically. So they are very, very patient. So there are many studies of how do they find their way? Why do they have such instincts? And of course, this applies to many birds, but they use all their senses except for taste, of course. They sense magnetic fields, and apparently a pigeon was caught in Yellowstone National Park because there's a sort of aberration with the magnetic field there, and it just was there for like weeks and weeks until a bird fancier realized what was happening, and it just kept flying around in circles, and he released it. So they have magnetic bits in their eyes and their beak, and they're able to sense the Earth's magnetic field. So that helps them with navigation. They can also smell atmospheric trace gases, and they actually can do much better navigating on days with high pollution. So let's say a pigeon has lost its way out of a city. It knows where a city is just by its smell, obviously, because there's a lot more smog and pollution there. Pigeons also have incredible hearing. Our range goes down to about 20 hertz. A pigeon is 0.1 hertz. So they can actually hear the ocean waves from 10 miles away. So that also helps them in navigation. And they don't even have ears. No, yet they do have ears. You just don't see them. Now, pigeons are globetrotters, and I've been very fortunate to travel the world looking for pigeons. And of course, Venice is one of the pigeon hotspots in the world. And pigeons actually, can you imagine people go to Venice just to see the pigeons? There's nothing interesting there except for pigeons, basically. And there was a mayor about 20 years ago who just decided there were just too many pigeons in Venice. So he called about 5,000 of them. Mm-hmm. Well, needless to say, he was not reelected. And that never happened again. I went on a pigeon hajj to Egypt in 2019, and I was delighted to see pigeons living by the pyramids of Giza. And I also saw old dovecotes that are probably hundreds of years old. And the Egyptians, of course, they've been using pigeons for 3,000 years. They have these dovecotes, and the pigeons, again, they're totally carefree and require no maintenance. They come and go, they feed themselves, they have their babies, and they poop inside of the dovecotes. And of course, what did they do? We mentioned this in a question earlier, that guano was priceless because this was before they made fake fertilizers. So pigeon guano is what fertilized the entire Nile Valley. That's why it's this rich oasis in the middle of the Sahara Desert, thanks to pigeons. So pigeons were really valuable, and they actually had guards on some of the dovecotes to prevent people from stealing the poop. I was very lucky to go to the Valley of the Kings, and if anybody's ever gotten a chance, it's near Luxor. It's where all of the tombs are, many of the tombs, including Tutankhamun. There's they found at least 120 tombs to different Egyptian kings there, and it's in a limestone valley. It's an amazing place, and it has over 8,351 Google reviews. I think it's like 4.5. Some people were disappointed, but you can see on the map, here's the Nile River, and here's Luxor, and Valley of the Kings is here, and it's in the desert, basically. So it's a spectacular place. But while I was looking at Tutankhamun's tomb and many other kings' tomb, which was spectacular, don't get me wrong, I looked up at the limestone cliffs, and what did I see? Pigeons in their natural habitat, living in the limestone caves. This is up about 200 feet. So they live on one of the most energy focused places on earth. I mean, the Egyptians made the Valley of the Kings for a reason, obviously. I mean, they didn't just pick a place willy-nilly to bury all their kings. Well, pigeons follow them. And here you see pigeons going into that. That's how they live. And does it remind anybody of buildings in anywhere? Well, that's why they do so well in cities. And here I managed to, this is trigger warning, but here are pigeons procreating. Pigeons are also very well regarded in India. This is the Red Fort, which is outside of Jaipur, and many pigeons live there and live a wonderful life. As you can see, these are some pigeons, and there's many people that feed pigeons, keep fresh water for them, and that's kind of their full-time job. And that's me on the left holding a copy of the first edition of the New York Pigeon book at the Jain Temple, which is in downtown Delhi. And there happens to be in the temple complex, there is a bird rescue place, and they take in every single bird. And of course, pigeons are really important. And they have, the Wild Bird Fund, as I said, now handles 13,000 birds a year. Well, the Jain Animal Hospital took in, the year I was there, 72,000 birds. And of course, pigeons are almost worshipped there. You see, there's the roadside deity Hanuman, who's the monkey god, and pigeons love him. And then there's also men who sell bird feed, pigeon feed in the mornings, and many people who are going on their way to work, they will stop and buy food to feed the pigeons, because many Hindus believe in reincarnation. So that pigeon that they're feeding may be their grandparents. This is one of the many incredible things about pigeons, but this is, of course, the Taj Mahal, which is one of the most spectacular structures in the world. It was built as a shrine by the Mughal Emperor Shah Jahan. It was as a memorial to his wife, who died giving birth to their 14th child. And her tomb is inside of that building, and it's all sorts of onyx and marble. It's inlaid with precious stones. And when we were waiting to get in, suddenly a pigeon flew out. And it just boggled my mind that they allowed pigeons to live inside the Taj Mahal. So this is some pictures of the Jain Charity Bird Hospital that I mentioned. Some interesting murals. Don't really know how to explain them. And they also take care of a lot of kites, which are sort of their red-tailed hawks. They get cut on kite lines. Kites are, of course, related to hawks, but they get caught on kite lines. I'm talking about kite string. And a lot of times when they're having competitive kite competitions, they put glass on the strings of their kites. And of course, if a bird flies into that, it can be very dangerous. These are some of the pigeon patients, which look very much like some of the pigeon patients we have in New York. This is the pigeon care rooms. This is going back to Venice. This is the Piazza San Marco. So many of the pigeons in this postcard image are probably the ancestors of today's pigeons, just removed a few generations. Now, has anybody wanted to see a baby pigeon? Anybody? It's very quiet out there. Okay, so this is a mother pigeon sitting on 2 eggs. I happened to receive as a gift, actually a pigeon nest was being removed from a building in the East Village. Somebody called up Rita McMahon at the Wild Bird Fund and said, I don't know what to do with these eggs. And she suggested that they call me and I might be able to help raise them. So I brought home these 2 eggs and put it on a heating pad. And about a week later, the egg was broken and I was in shock. And suddenly this tiny little thing that is the size of my thumbnail, as we see right here, hatched by itself. So you can even still see the piece of the eggshell, the pigeon eggshell. And I raised this pigeon as if it was my own baby pigeon. And I got to photograph it. It was just quite incredible. As you can see, pigeons are tritial. They are helpless, blind, and deaf when they're born, unlike ducks that are precocial, and they are born ready to swim. I mean, they just like jump out of the nest and they're swimming already. This is the baby in my hand on day 1, so you can get a sense of how small it is. This is sort of a few days later, they get a little awkward, you know, the legs, but you can still see, you can actually see through the skin and you can see the organs. And of course, you can see the blood vessels. This is baby's first step. So this pigeon's about 8 days old and he's just starting to, flap his wings, or well, sort of its wings, its little arms that will become its wings. And you can see the feathers just coming in right here. These are the permanent feathers, and there's a couple on the wing. This photo actually ran in National Geographic. They did a whole story on pigeons a couple of years ago. But pigeons are rock stars. I think there's somebody in the audience that this pigeon looks a little bit like, but I won't mention any names. That's just my personal opinion. Pigeons also guard their own banks. So this is the U.S. Pigeon Trust Company. This is out in Brooklyn. So if you're looking for a car loan or a house loan or something, they do loans for Florida as well. So give them a call. And as we sort of wrap things up, I just wanted to, so of course, Nikola Tesla was a very famous inventor. He actually was the inventor of alternating current, which we all use in our homes today. And there was a battle with Edison, who was a proponent of DC current, but it was Nikola Tesla who worked for George Westinghouse. His way of electricity was much more efficient, of course. And he, in the end of his life, he became a real pigeon fancier, and he lived in the New Yorker Hotel, which is on 34th Street, and he had a room, and he would go every day to feed the pigeons in Bryant Park. And I love his quote. I have been feeding pigeons, thousands of them for years, but there was one, a beautiful bird, pure white with light gray tips on its wings. That one was different. It was a female. I had only to wish and call her, and she would come flying to me. I love that pigeon as a man loves a woman. She loved me. As long as I had her, there was purpose in my life. So, summing up, I want to say, should pigeons be our national bird? Okay, and that's good night. Pigeons continually amaze me, and I was in Herald Square. I don't know if anybody's been to Herald Square. It's where Macy's is. It's kind of a very loud, bright place. And I looked up, and this is the old, it's an old hotel, and that's where the pigeons spend the night. They just sort of tuck themselves in, close their eyes, and they sleep on a ledge. And just remember, be nice to pigeons. I'm on social media if you want to follow me as the New York Pigeon. There's the New York Pigeon book on Facebook, and I'm not on the Twitter thing, so forget that. And my website is andrewgarnphoto.com, and you can reach me by email. And let's take some questions. Is anybody there?
Andrew, just give me
Yes. Okay.
give me a
You're
moment.
there.
Yes, I'm
Okay.
here.
Okay, great.
Okay, so I'm here. Andrew, thank you so much. That was such a lively, wry. I love your wry sense of humor. Wonderful photos.
Thank you.
Such a great presentation. I really, and informative also. Besides everything else, it was just so incredibly informative. And
Well,
you took
good.
us not only to the New York Pigeon, but you took us all over the world, which was
Yes.
just great, just great. So we do have questions in the chat, and I'm going to pull them up. And remember, everybody, if you have questions for Andrew, please put them in the chat, and I'm going to kind of go in order here. So first questions from Kevin Baker, who pretty much when you first started, he asked, do other birds also make crop milk that you know of?
Yes, I know that red-tailed hawks do. I don't know any other birds offhand, but I know that red-tailed hawks make crop milk.
Okay, well, thank you for that. Sabina Beg asks, she says, I love these portraits full of personality. I couldn't agree more. Paula Lockshorn says, love all those eyes. That was a great photo or collage of all the eyes that you showed of different pigeons.
Mhm.
Is the fact that they reproduce so much of a problem, she also asks?
Well, pigeon overpopulation is a problem for some people because they live in places where people don't want them, basically. So that's under subway elevated lines. And the reason why there are so many is because so many people feed them, and there needs to be some awareness about that. I mean, as much as I love pigeons, I realize that there might be too many. And for instance, I'm across the street from two small parks. They're about 2 blocks long and about a third of a block wide, and each one has its own flock of pigeons. And I feed them in the winter time. I always try to feed them some seed when it gets very, very cold. And before the pandemic, there was always about 55 to 60 pigeons. Just guess how many pigeons there are now. And I'm just talking about my side of the park. There's a whole nother flock across Second Avenue. Now there are 150 pigeons. So during the pandemic, I think everybody thought, oh my God, these poor pigeons are going to starve to death if I don't feed them. So there are the regular people that feed them every single day. And then there's people that come through and they feed them, they have some bread or they have whatever. And so there's maybe too many pigeons now. But of course, there are hawks, and they pick them off. About one a week gets eaten by a hawk. So, but yeah, maybe, it's a problem like under an elevated line, at a subway stop. There's a lot of poop there, and it's because too many people feed them. I was working at the Wild Bird Fund one day, and this guy came in with a giant flower box filled with baby pigeons, and that had fallen out of a nest. And I was like, where did you get all these pigeons? And it was from underneath a highway out in Brooklyn. And it turns out he was feeding them 30 pounds of seed a day. And there's no reason to do that, for one thing, because there's plenty of other food around, and it will only encourage overpopulation. And then when there is suddenly no food, they will die of starvation. So it's important to balance out the diet.
Right. Yeah. And that's often an issue that people, should not be feeding wildlife. They should let
Yeah,
wildlife.
right.
It's interesting. So I remember reading something fairly recently, actually, that the average New York pigeon only lives for about a year. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
about a year to 3 years. It really depends.
Right.
Yeah, it really depends where they live. I think the pigeons in my park are somewhat protected, but there's all sorts of predators, and not the usual predators. I mean, yes, hawks will eat them, but they get hit by cars, they get hit by
Right.
bicycles. There's also pigeon netting that goes on, where there's like a few guys that have been doing this for like 20 years. They steal pigeons from the street with nets, and they sell them for pigeon shoots in Pennsylvania, where live pigeon shooting is legal. And they get like $2 a bird, so they'll pick up like 100 or 200 birds a day, and they'll get arrested, every so often, and they'll spend a night in prison, pay $130 fine, and then they're out again, and they're just stealing pigeons. And I've actually caught one particular guy like 3 times. I caught another guy, and they're just nasty, nasty people. They're just, I mean, imagine like stealing pigeons for a living.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we have people here who are do that with painted buntings, and they
Oh,
trap them and they sell them on the exotic bird market.
oh,
So
really? Oh,
yeah, that happens down here as well.
mhm.
Kevin Baker asks, were you kidding about the Roman pigeons being large enough to pull kids in chariot races? I thought you were, but
That was a joke. Although that's a real fresco, so I don't know, where that came from or why they made the pigeon so big, but that is a real fresco.
okay.
I believe it's from Naples, but yes,
So
that was not a joke. That was a joke. Yes.
yes, thank you. I thought so. So Leslie Siegel says amazing facts. Paula Lockshorn says, how do you hear without ears? Because we don't see the ears. So you
Right.
maybe explain
That
that.
that was sort of a joke. Yeah, yeah. Of course, birds have ears. They're underneath the feathers, and they're usually behind their eyes. And it's like owls look like they have ears, the tufts, but those are actually not their ears. They're not. Their ears are sort of in the same spot, sort of on the side of their heads, and they're more like cavities. They don't
Right,
have
right.
like shells around their ears like we do, or like dogs have big ears to take in more sound.
Thank you for clarifying that, Andrew. One question I just noticed that I missed. Why are pigeons called birds of peace? Celia Weinberger wants to know.
That's a good question. I don't really know. I guess I know that doves are released at weddings, but I don't really know the answer to that. I'll have to look that up.
Okay. Cheryl Stewart says pigeon guano is still used as fertilizer in France in many of the vineyards.
Ah,
I visited a vineyard in Gaelic, southwest France, and they told us all about it. So that's fascinating.
ah, okay. There's
Uh,
also a great book somebody did about 20 years ago on all the dovecotes from France, because all the rich, very, very rich, wealthy people who had estates had dovecotes, and they were these sort of garden follies. So there are these architectural marvels.
wow.
If you find this book, I'm sure there's images online, but these dovecotes were just spectacular.
Great, great. That sounds so fascinating. Wendy Stacy asks, why do my rescue pigeons seem to ignore me sometimes? I thought they had poor hearing.
Well, they're pretending. They're pretending they don't hear you. I don't know. Perhaps they're just tired of you. No, I don't know. I mean, pigeons can be sort of aloof. It really depends. I think they all have different personalities. Oh, one thing I wanted to mention about the lifespan of pigeons: a pigeon that's a pet that lives indoors will live 20 years, no problem. It's like, a feral cat or a feral dog might only live 1 or 2 years on the
Right,
street.
right.
Same with the pigeon. There's just lots of danger out there.
Of course. And Wendy Stacy followed that up with, she says, I guess on purpose.
Yeah.
So Wendy Stacy also says Bush Wildlife, which is a rehab facility that we partner with on different projects. Bush Wildlife has a gentleman they work with. He has a pigeon rescue. So
Oh, okay.
so
Oh,
he,
great.
yeah,
And is he in Palm Beach?
yeah, that's in Palm Beach County. That's
Oh,
in
that's
Palm Beach
that's
County.
great.
Yes, yes.
Okay, good to know.
And Andrea Haas says, awesome regarding your presentation. Kevin Baker asked, what were you feeding the baby pigeon?
Oh, that's a good question. So to sort of replicate what a parent would do, you have to get it's like sort of a needle syringe. It's a stainless steel, very narrow needle thing that has a opening in the very bottom, and you have to make a formula that will help feed the bird that is an approximation of what a parent bird would give it. And you have to like jam it down their throat, and it's
Wow.
really harrowing to do that.
Yeah.
Because I could see after a couple of days the baby was like shriveling up. It was like on death's door, and I was like, I gotta get the food down there, because you think you're going to hurt it, and also it's easy to hurt it, because if you don't put it down the right hole or the right pipe, you will kill the bird basically. But I did manage to figure it out, and it did survive.
Great. Was that pigeon eventually released or
Yes.
what? It
Yes.
was. Okay. Yeah, I was curious. And so Kevin Baker, now you know that because I know Kevin Baker shared his collage of pigeons that he saw in Fiji.
Yes.
And so now, Kevin, if you're planning on also raising pigeons now, Now you know. Kristen Murtaugh says, thank you. This was wonderful. Shelley Rosenberg says, fabulous presentation. I will never look at pigeons the same way again. I don't think anyone who's seen this presentation will. Jeannie Mauser says, I was interested in pigeons serving as radiologist. Any more details?
They don't actually serve as radiologists because, radiologists make $250,000 a year. They have a very strong union, so that it will be over their dead bodies that they let pigeons
So they keep
analyze
the pigeons
X-ray.
out. But
Yeah.
they apparently they were taught that skill
Yes, they were.
to be able to
Basically,
differentiate that.
they were taught to find abnormalities in
Right,
X-rays and
right.
CT scans, and they have incredibly good eyesight. And in fact, their brain, 1/3 of their brain is used for visual acuity.
Right. And I
And,
guess
another
sorry.
thing, sorry, about their eyes, we have sort of round oval eyeballs, whereas pigeons have sort of flat eyeballs, which gives them the ability to see
Oh, that's interesting.
great depth of field. So if they're pecking at the ground, let's say eating food, they can also be focused to infinity. So let's say if there's a hungry hawk coming their way, they'll see it.
Great, great. That's helps in survival, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And I guess that they learn to differentiate cancer cells
Mhm.
by conditioning. I assume that was the process was
Yeah.
used. And it was interesting that you brought up B.F. Skinner because I know when I taught psychology many years ago, I would introduce the subject of conditioning with pigeon theory because that's what it
Mhm.
was called. So that
Yeah.
was fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah.
Paula Lockshorn says, "How can pigeons be as smart as crows?"
Well, I think that there's different ways to measure intelligence in animals. And I think whereas crows, of course, know how to use tools and they'll mourn other crows. I think pigeons have other skills where a pigeon can learn from a human much it can focus for much longer. A crow can't really do that. I think a crow has more innate intelligence, whereas a pigeon can learn more than a crow.
Which is I guess why you said they've been the most used bird in experimentation.
Yes, and I think in the journal Science, there's over 1,200 studies on pigeons. Pigeons alone.
Wow,
Yeah.
wow. Sabina Beg mentions that flamingos make crop as well to add to our
Oh, okay.
pollinating
Thank you.
birds,
Good to know.
which is an iconic bird here in South
Yeah.
Florida. Jeanette Mitchell says, loved all the information. How do they home? I worked at the USPS, United States Postal Service, and people mail their pigeons for races. Can you elaborate on that?
Sure. So, like many birds, they know where home is, whereas like an Arctic tern can go 12,000 miles round trip, go to the same place it goes in the summer, and then come back, in the summer in the northern hemisphere to the same spot. So, birds have this incredible ability to navigate. Pigeons do as well. And as I mentioned, I sort of touched on this, they use a combination of senses. They use the magnetic poles, they use visual clues, like they will follow streets or monuments. And they were used, as I mentioned, Genghis Khan used them for, so you take a pigeon one place and it knows how to get home. So, and it just, it uses hearing, it uses smell. So, like many birds, they have this incredible ability. It's not
Wonderful.
unique to pigeons, really.
Yeah, wonderful. Lillian Maniscalco says, amazing. I learned so much tonight. Thank you. Daniel Averbrook says, great presentation. Thank you so much. Barry Heimlich says, we have pigeons here too. They are nesting in Green Cay and Wakota wetlands area. And of course, we see them
Oh, okay.
everywhere. Yeah,
So
particularly
I'm not sure what is Green Cay. Is that more of a?
Green Cay and Wakota are created wetland areas in Palm Beach County.
Oh, okay.
So they're nesting in those habitats. Wakota is a very famous area in Palm Beach County that photographers come to from all over the world to photograph birds.
Oh, okay. Okay. And pigeons are there. That's
Yes,
interesting.
yes. Steve Weston says, I don't know if this was mentioned in Minnesota. A friend of mine has recorded pigeons nesting here in every month of the year.
Yep. Well, I mentioned that I've seen them in Siberia, in cities in Siberia, where it's like it's colder than Minnesota, I would imagine, and
Yes,
they
yes.
just find, like I'll notice on very, very cold days, they will go to like the eaves of roofs, which are the hottest place on a building
Right, right.
to stay as warm as possible.
And Barry Heimlich says, of course, they occupy the visitor center. I think he's referring to Green Cay, where they have a visitor center.
Mm.
Anne Remler says, wonderful presentation. Thank you so much. Thanks. Where do we find the gift shop? She asks.
Oh, well, that was sort of kidding about this. This is that was a joke. That was
Okay, okay.
sorry.
You have such a wry sense of humor.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's lie. It's just really lying more than anything. But the book is available. The New York Pigeon book is available online. Or what I would suggest though is ask your local bookstore if they don't have it already to stock it. Then that way you're supporting a local bookstore.
Thank you, and I'm glad you mentioned that, Andrew.
Yeah.
I appreciate
So
that.
the book is here. So.
Wendy Stacy says yes. Jupiter Pigeon Rescue also get babies looking for homes.
Oh,
Fed 4x a day, 4 times a day.
okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Jeanette Mitchell says, what is your Instagram handle?
Instagram is New York Pigeon.
New York
Easy
Pigeon.
to remember.
Okay, New York Pigeon.
Mhm.
Lisa Carroll says, lots of great info tonight and entertaining too. I totally agree. I laughed out loud a number of times.
Because
I'm
I
glad
didn't
I
hear
was.
any reaction. I thought everybody fell asleep.
Well, I don't know if you could see the reactions on your screen, but people were constantly doing hearts and
Oh no, I
smiles
didn't
and
see anything
thumbs
at all.
up. Oh yeah, yeah.
And I just thought everybody fell asleep.
No, it was not crickets. Trust me.
Okay, good.
Jeanette says she found it. Sabina says for more of his work, visit andrewgarnphoto.com or follow him on Instagram at New York Pigeon. Also, she gave your website as well. Marge Barnum says, thank you, great presentation. Wendy Stacy says, pigeons are emotional. My rescue pigeon would go on long walks with my cat.
Oh my God.
Rides happily in golf cart.
Oh my God. Yeah. It's funny in rehab, pigeons, like they don't mind when because they know you're trying to help them. A lot of other birds get very stressed, but a pigeon, like if you're working on its wing or if it's greasy or it just is very calm and it knows that you're trying to help it. And they also look you in the eye, I think, unlike other birds.
Right, they look away.
It
Right.
really is like and I mean, the human pigeon connection is at least 100,000 years old. So
Wow.
probably they were the first domesticated animal, really, before dogs.
Thank you for that, and that's a great piece of information. Wendy Stacy also indicates that at least you have one book sale. She says, "I'll get your book."
Oh well, thank you very much.
Beth Mora says, can you send a recording of his presentation to a transplanted New Yorker in Seattle? So Beth, we record these presentations and we post them on our YouTube channel. So you'll be able to see Andrew there, and just go to the Audubon Everglades YouTube channel. Perhaps somebody could put that in the chat real quickly. And Sabina says it'll be available on our YouTube this week. And that's it for comments. And I know everybody enjoyed your presentation. It was wonderful. I can't tell you how much I enjoyed it. Thank you for joining us tonight. And
thank you for having me. It's very exciting to do something with the Everglades Audubon.
Oh,
maybe someday I'll meet you because I love the Everglades. I haven't been there in quite some time.
Well, if you're ever down here, we'll take you on a tour of where we know pigeons hang out.
Definitely, and maybe some other birds too.
Yes,
Rosie and spoonbills are always fun to see too.
Oh yes, without a doubt, and great presentation. And you're a great presenter, by the way, Andrew. I just wanted to mention that to you.
Thank you.
You really have your use of humor and your the way you present information.
Well, pigeons, pigeons, there's got to be some humor with pigeons,
I agree. Well, thank you so much. It was a great evening. And hopefully one day we'll get to meet you. And if you could stop sharing your screen so I can share mine, that would be great, Andrew.
All right, good night, everyone. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Good night, Andrew.
Good night, Andrew.
So thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight. It takes a great team to help create these visual presentations for you, these virtual presentations. So thank you to all of them again. And we can't wait to see you in October on the first Tuesday of the month, when we will be hosting, his name's just slipped my mind. Anyway, we will be hosting a presentation on the great cockaded, on the red cockaded woodpecker, and on the Florida scrub jay. So please join us next month for our meeting. Rob Rasmuth. Okay, thank you, Mary. If you are not currently a friend of Audubon Everglades, please, we hope you will become a member. Anyway, good night. Enjoy the beginning of migration, which is basically almost on its way. Kind of have started somewhat, and remember to look at those that information to protect birds from striking your window and to prevent as many bird deaths as we possibly can. Anyway, good night, everybody. Thank you so much.